and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Superpower TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
What if I told you there's strong evidence that an attitude has a value of $24,750,000? The value of your attitude and the ROI on your attitude is what we're going to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training. Subscribe now.
I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and there's actually evidence because there was a guy who was a professional, a guy who had a very specific job, and he was hired by a certain company to come to town and do that job at the highest level, probably one of the best, perhaps, of all time, but for certain in that season, in that time frame that this guy did that job, they paid him $25 million to move to town to do that job. But there were some issues. There were some issues with teammates. There were some issues with other people around the job. There were issues with the boss and issues with the leadership. And eventually, that contract, null and void. Thank you. Thanks for playing. Have a nice day. You're out of here. And that $25 million went poof. Now later, the same person came back to the same town to join a different organization. And that organization said, look, based on the skills that you have, look on the talent that you bring to the table, all the things that you've accomplished. I mean, we just got to look at your track record. You're pretty incredible. We'll pay you, let's see, $250,000 to do the same job. But we ain't putting up with all that attitude stuff that you kind of seem to bring everywhere you go. Now, feel free to fact check me on this. His initials were T.O., once for the Dallas Cowboys and then for the Dallas Desperados. Same job, same skill set, same talent, a couple of years later. But see, there was this thing about the attitude in the way that it was presented on and off the field, on and out of the job. Oh, we know the track record is pretty substantial. Not just that individual, but how many others come with this incredible skill set. Johnny Football might be one that we look at. There was a guy, quarterback, can't remember his name, South Carolina, I believe it was. Maybe it was Atlanta? We'd have to look it up, right? But got into dogfights, got into gambling. Others have gotten into multiple affairs. And see, there's a place where your attitude, your integrity, your character outshines your resume, your skill set, your track record, your win-loss record, the amount of money that you've generated. All of those things fall away when they're laid up against your character. I mean, recently, a CEO was busted on the kiss cam. Busted? I mean, if you're going to go to an event and sit next to your spouse and the camera's on you, kiss away, baby. Yeah, but it wasn't his spouse. It was somebody that he was supposed to be working with, having a professional relationship with. But now it's international news that his integrity isn't quite what they expected. Now, I don't know what all of the fallout has been behind that, but just the fact that his name and likeness has been in the news and his company has had to reconsider perhaps some relationship things with him, that's a telltale sign right there. See, when it comes to being a great leader, there are those who can lead with an iron fist. And there are those who can lead with a velvet touch. There are those who lead from the heart and those who lead with their extravagant intellect. I mean, there are people who look at Elon Musk and they think, well, he's made a whole lot of money, but he hasn't paid enough in taxes. And that's a character issue. But if you ask Elon Musk, in his own words, I believe in a recent interview, he said it straight up. Look, if you just look at the taxes I paid last year, I paid more in taxes than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. When your tax bill starts with a B, not an M, not a T, not 5, 6, 7 digits, we're talking 10, 11, 12 digits. At that point, you've paid some fair shares and then perhaps more. But some would look at him and go, well, so what? He's built a car company and, solar and Starlink. And so what? He's provided Starlink around the world when there were crises and did it for free of charge. And so what if he's gone to the moon and come back, or even caught a rocket coming down from the sky with chopsticks, in his words? So what? I mean, he's got 13 kids with 4 different baby mamas. I mean, what kind of character integrity is that? And there are those who will look at that decision and go, well, that's not exactly the way that I would do it. And there are some judgment calls to be made there, some religious differences perhaps, some cultural differences perhaps. By the way, you may not know, but here in the U.S., there are places where having multiple wives at the same time is even acceptable. And around the world, there are multiple religions and cultures and societies where having multiple wives even at the same time is perfectly acceptable, and having kids with all of them is perfectly acceptable. So is that a character flaw? Well, that's a judgment call, isn't it? But see, here's what's unmistakable. What's unmistakable is this little thing called integrity. I say all the time, and nobody's convinced me otherwise yet, your brand is not your colors or slogans and your logos. Your brand is not your own fancy little tagline that you put on the bottom of your business card. It's helpful. It's great to have a sound bite, as Don Miller says, that makes it really easy for people to understand what you do and what to expect of you. It's great. In fact, it should happen. You should have the name of your business and then a tagline, a sound bite that describes who you help and how you help them. Who you help and how you help them is a big part of your branding. It is a big part of helping people understand who you are. But I want to take your brand to another level and say it like this. Your brand, it's what people say about you when you walk out of the room. When you're not there to defend yourself, to argue, to clarify, when you're not there to look back on what they've said and go, well, it's not really like that. I mean, even if you're busted on the kiss cam, you got to come up with some kind of story. You got to have some kind of answer for why you're doing what you're doing. When your brand is put on display like that, people are going to talk about you. And often they're going to talk about you when you're not in the room. And that brand discussion, that's as valuable or destructive as a referral. Because it is. What do they say? The cheapest form of advertising is what? Word of mouth. Well, what is word of mouth? It's what they say about when you're not around. I did business with this company. It was incredible. I got everything that I expected out of them. It was exactly like the brochure. It was exactly what they promised. That's a good brand. If everybody talks about you and what they say is all good things, that's awesome. That's why people love finding 5,000 Google reviews on a product or a service. That's a good story to tell. But if your brand is what they say about you when you walk out of the room, Let me give you a harder challenge. Not just building that thing that you want them to say about you when you walk out of the room, but how about this one? Your integrity is how you act, the choices that you make, how you choose to decide and behave when you believe no one is watching. I mean, I don't know to what extent said CEO went to cover tracks, to maybe go to the game while family was out of town, to maybe go to the game while the calendar said he was at a business function. Maybe it was a business function. Maybe he had 10 customers there. I don't know the answer to that question. Here's what I do know. When he got home, he had some other questions to answer. He made some choices when he believed that no one who would care was looking. And then all of a sudden, the whole world was looking. See, your integrity as a leader isn't just what you tell people. It isn't even what people find out. Your integrity as a leader are the choices that you make when you truly believe no one is looking. Now, one of the choices that you make when you believe no one is looking is an attitude. Now, over the next couple of episodes, maybe several, maybe all of next week, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to dig into some very specific attitudes and talk about how they show up in your workplace, where they come from, how do you discover them, how do you direct them if you're the leader. If you're responsible for building the culture and the brand within your organization, then attitude is something you're responsible for. And whether you bring it on the field, or you bring it in front of the cameras, or you bring it in the boardroom, or you bring it on the production floor, or you bring it face-to-face to customers, that attitude permeates everything. So I want to say a few things about attitude specifically, about the concept, the foundation of attitude. Again, where does it come from? How do we discover it? And how do we direct it? This is what I call the attitude hack. In fact, there's an entire course on Story Power Academy called Attitude Hack. You can download it and go through the whole thing at your own pace. There's even training documents and manuals in there that you can walk through to understand what is a good attitude, what is a bad attitude, how do they manifest, how do they show up. And we're going to walk through some of that over the next few episodes. But I want you to start today with what is an attitude, how do we discover it, and how do we direct it? So the first question, what is an attitude? I love to read people like Bruce Lipton, Dr. Daniel Amen, Dr. Caroline Leaf. All of these people, Robert Cialdini, John Maxwell even has an entire book on attitude. But there's this really simple, nearly mathematic equation, if you will, about attitude. I found this very simplified, synthesized concept in Dr. Caroline Leaf's book, Who Switched On My Brain, and she says it like this. Attitude is, so let's just change that is to equals. Attitude equals what you think plus how you feel. Let me take that another level. What you think about how you feel, and how you feel about what you think. So if we look at that moment where integrity says, I don't think anybody's going to find out about this, the way I handle the checkbook, the way I pay the bills or don't, the bills that I choose to prioritize, the people that I spend my time with. I have both coaching clients and people who work on my team that are married to someone other than me. I also have someone on my team who has been married to me for 31 years. And that someone has complete access to my cell phone. There is no password that my spouse does not know. There is no file, no document, no app, no photos, no text message, no email, no web address, no online messaging app that my wife does not have 100% access to at any moment. And in a lot of those messages that go back and forth between me and other people who are not my spouse but are of the opposite gender, those messages she's copied on. Very, very seldom With clients under the privacy of their own conversations, those are done on Zoom. They are recorded. They are between me and the client. There are things that my clients know that I discuss with people that will benefit them, things that are going to grow their business, things that are going to help them, connections that I will make with other clients. They know what I'll discuss. They also know what I will never discuss. And those things that I will never discuss, they don't get put in a place besides their private Zoom recordings that anybody else is going to see them. But if they were written down, recorded, logged, my clients know my spouse has access to them. I will never reveal them, but if something happens, I have no secrets from my spouse. That's part of my own character development that didn't happen easily, and it didn't happen overnight. Choices I made when I was convinced no one was looking. Some of those had consequences. And part of my guard against those consequences is to say, at a minimum, in this space, 100% transparency. In my relationship with my spouse, I am a piece of glass. There's nothing to hide. There's nothing else in there that she doesn't already know about. Now, I know that's not easy for everybody. In fact, I have children that are grown adults that level of transparency is not natural in their relationship. Not with their spouse, not with their kids, not with anybody else. They have their little private zones and they guard them. I think time will tell whether that's a good choice or a bad choice. But in my life, given my past and my relationship, my integrity, my attitude sounds like this. When I think about the secrets that I have kept in the past, and I know how those made my spouse feel, I think differently about the secrets that I've kept in the past, so that she feels differently. And because I feel more confident in our relationship when I think about being transparent, even with my confidentiality, when I know that I can go to her and say, I trust this. Even the laws of our nation say the spouse confidentiality is an incrimination. She has the right to say, I will not testify against my spouse. Like a doctor's privilege or an attorney-client privilege that says I don't have to testify against them. I'm allowed to know things about them that nobody else in the world knows, and I don't have to tell you. You can't compel me by law to tell you his secrets. That level of trust and transparency is not easy to achieve. But I'm going to tell you something. The higher you go in leadership, the more absolutely crucial that is going to be in your life, to find that place of integrity. Now, I'm also going to tell you, there are going to be places where things that I'm processing in my life, I won't necessarily hide them from my wife, but I will process them before I reveal them. Here's what I mean by that. There are things that I'm growing up in, things that I'm discovering about myself. Yes, I'm old and I'm still discovering. But as I'm discovering them, some of them I look at and I go, how would she feel if she had to think through what's going on in my head right now? Because I'm just realizing this, and I'm realizing I've been doing this wrong the whole time. And so in the grand scheme of things, what is attitude in relationship to your brand? What is attitude in relationship to your culture? What is attitude in relationship to your meta-narrative? Now, if you've been tracking all of the episodes so far this week, we've talked about the meta-narrative. We've talked about deceptive leaders and AI and how they can manipulate the way you think. We've talked about how your story relates to your meta-narrative, the pattern versus the picture. We've talked about how the vision that you create, that's the picture on the outside of the puzzle box. And so you might be asking, where in the world does attitude fit into all that? I want you to understand. The choices that you make when you believe nobody's looking, that defines integrity. The attitude is even deeper down inside you than your integrity displays. And the way that attitude fits to your meta-narrative, I want you to think back to the last podcast. We talked about how creating that vision might look like a peaceful lake in a mountain scene, and on the grassy meadow is a picnic blanket. And on that picnic blanket, you can picture yourself with someone you love. Stop for a moment and ask yourself, in that detailed picture, if I get to paint the picture of anything that I want, if I get to feel about this image, the emotions that I long to feel, this inspiration that moves me, that motivates me to do something grand and fabulous. When I think about sitting on that picnic blanket, am I alone? Do I have my favorite book? Am I listening to some kind of music? Am I sipping my bubbly water, or am I sipping on something other than that? Am I with someone I love? My pet, my child, my grandparents, my spouse, or someone else? See, these are the little details that they go back to what I think about how I feel and how I feel about what I think. Here's what I mean. If you're painting a picture that stirs up, that evokes emotion from you, that compels and motivates you, the tiniest details in the vision that you're crafting for yourself, for your organization, for your company as it faces the public, for your family as it moves into legacy generation after generation after generation. If there's something in you that allows you to feel excitement about what could be harmful to that picture, you have an attitude that's out of check. Let me put this into a deeper context. You ready? Hold on. I'm about to be transparent. And if you even remotely relate to what I'm about to say, if you know, you know. And if you don't know, ask me. I'll explain it a little deeper. Let me say it like this. When you're an addict, because I was an addict for 2.5 decades, when you're an addict, you're likely to do things for the feeling inside, the emotional high, the biological, biophysical response that you have to that thing that you do. It's how you feel about what you think. I know women who have left their marriage because their husband had a magazine about clothing or a magazine about cars that didn't have so much clothing. And for them, that was enough to say, I feel, as a spouse, I feel betrayed by my husband. I also know spouses who have left a relationship over little tiny bottles that came home from the hotel or the airplane that were, I don't know, hidden in a shoe, in a box, in the closet. After the promise was made, I don't do that anymore. I have no interest in that. I don't want any of that. And yet, how I feel about what I think I can get away with this, and that makes it exciting. I think I can do this, and no one will know. Now you've got an attitude that questions your own integrity. And eventually, that will eat you up inside. Listen to the guys like Chase Hughes, Chris Voss. When they talk about how the CIA interrogates or law enforcement interrogates somebody, they ask questions that are intended to poke you deep in your emotional center. Before your brain can process what's the right idea, how should I say this, how should I not say this, what's the right answer to get me out of trouble, to keep them from asking any more questions, before any of that happens, your face responds. Your eyebrows, your lips, the crow's feet on the side of your eyes, all of those things react before your words are processed in your brain. True story. Ask them. And when you realize that, what you realize is that your integrity and what I feel about what I think and what I think about how I feel, if I can make you just a little bit angry. In fact, there's a great clip by Chase Hughes talking about programming for manipulation. And he says, you'll notice in your social media feed, you'll get 3 or 4 or 5 posts in a row that just make you feel depressed and angry. You just want to punch a wall. And then all of a sudden, you get 2 or 3 posts in a row that just make you laugh and cry at the same time. I mean, they're just like, you're like, yes, we win, it's so awesome. And then right behind that, you'll have an ad. The advertisement was not accidentally placed there. Your attitude is being manipulated. how you feel about what you think and what you think about how you feel. And if the ability to direct your emotions can be done through various forms of media, then you can be provoked, inspired, motivated to take action on an advertisement. Now, the algorithm has already decided what it is you like based on what you clicked and what you shared. It already knows what causes you to emotionally engage with a video clip. How long did you watch the last one that was like this? Did you just keep swiping? Are you in the doom scroll already? Or are you watching the full length of all of those videos with the golden buzzer? If you even clicked on that and went to the golden buzzer and watched only the golden buzzer videos, where the anti-hero becomes the hero in a matter of 90 seconds or less. The kid who is told, you can't sing, comes back and then wins the whole thing. That stirs an emotion in you, and now all of a sudden you're more susceptible to buy than you were 5 minutes ago. This is a process of leading and directing your attitude. What is an attitude? It's how you think about what you feel. How do you detect them? Usually in facial expressions, often in tonality, in volume, in the speed of words. When people slow down, they're usually being more deliberate, which means they're intentionally thinking through it. They're not responding from passion, they're responding from calculated thought. Oh, so speech pace has a lot to do with your attitude, and it's directly tied to your integrity, which is directly tied to the who that you are deep inside, not the brand, what everybody says about you when you walk out of the room. Perhaps you've done a great job of selling that brand, but there's still something deep inside you, the real you, the who that you are, the how you think about what you feel and how you feel about what you think, the attitude that drives you. Is it driven by moral authority in your own life? By character in your own life? By being truly in touch with who you are in your own life, with the transparency of your own life? You have anybody in your life, spouse or otherwise, that if they ask you, what are you thinking right now? You're honest enough to say what I was thinking, even if it's dumb. I was thinking my left shoe feels tighter than my right shoe right now. I need to relace my boots. That's what I was thinking. While I'm standing here, I'm thinking, why does my left shoe feel tighter than my right shoe? Who cares? The person who's asking you to be transparent, to be honest, to have integrity, to have authenticity, because they're counting on you in the way you run your life, lead yourself, build your business, leave a legacy. All of those things come back to the who that you are. And here's a little indicator you might want to know. When you're painting that big picture vision and you're looking at the tiny little details, as an addict, if you've ever met an alcoholic who just likes to watch the football games on a Saturday or a Sunday, and halfway through the day, the middle of game 2, they realize, I just drank my last beer, but I'm also home with the kids, and I got a toddler who has to go in a car seat. An addict will put that kid in the car seat, a whole case of beer down, and drive to the store and buy another case of beer and drive back. You don't believe me? Just go watch some Fridays with Frank. Watch some Fridays with Frank and watch the number of times he arrests parents driving so intoxicated they wander into traffic while at the traffic stop while their kids are strapped in the back seat. That's an addict, my friend. That's someone whose thinking and feeling are not properly aligned. They feel like, I need this drink. I think illogically that I can do this and get away with it. I have no integrity, and nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know. How would they know? Until it's on national television. Until it's on YouTube with millions of views. Until everybody in the world is talking about the mistake that you made. Because there wasn't some checkpoint in your own imagination, in your own moral authority, in your own internal processes that went, if I truly think through that, I'm not just responding to how I feel. It would feel good to have a buzz. It would feel good to forget about all this pain. It would feel good to escape in this way, whatever that is. It would feel good to get this fix. And I don't think about the consequences. People who lack self-control, might lack it in a lot of other ways. It might be their diet. It might be their rage management. It might be their lack of focus on their career or their education. They have short-term thinking disease. They don't think even about what's going to happen later today or tomorrow or 5 years from now. All of that is attitude by definition. How you think about what you feel and how you feel about what you think. As leaders, we have to manage that. We are responsible for that. And we're responsible for the details in the big picture, because we have to understand that when we draw that big picture, we motivate, we inspire, we provoke, we evoke emotions from people. And that big picture will make people feel some kind of way. Now the question is the way they're feeling in line with what you were thinking when you put it out there? And do you have the integrity to go, this is what I was really thinking, this is what I was really feeling, and those are in alignment with my best good and yours too, because that is the heart of leadership. Man, I hope you'll stay with me as we begin to dig into some things like, what is an attitude of excellence? What does it look like? What does it sound like? How do you know if people on your team have it? And if they don't, how do you change that? That's what we're going to discuss over the next several episodes of Leading Leaders Podcast, and I hope that you'll stay with us. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypower